Welcome to the NICU Dad Podcast, a podcast for NICU dads by NICU dads. I'm Alex Zavala, a father to two preemie girls, Mia, who was born at 30 weeks, and Emerson, who was born at 27 weeks. Combined, my wife Jen and I both spent over 100 days in the NICU. After my last NICU experience, I started the NICU Dad. I did this to try and fill the gap of information and support that was lacking for NICU dads. Be sure and check out thenicudad.com, and hopefully you will find it a useful resource. In this podcast, we will cover many topics that NICU parents face, but from the NICU dad's perspective. Topics such as premature birth, bereavement, PTSD, and many others. These dads who you'll hear share their stories in hope of letting other NICU dads know they are not alone. Troy Bayse, a former Army reservist, and his wife Rebecca welcomed their daughter Riley in June of 2020 in Snellville, Georgia. Not only were they dealing with the baby born at 27 weeks, but they had to navigate their NICU stay during the height of the COVID crisis. Several hospitals implemented restrictions in the NICU during this time, many only allowing one parent in the NICU. Troy and Rebecca's hospital only allowed the mother into the NICU. It would be weeks before he was able to see his daughter. I'm happy to say today that after 7 weeks in the NICU, Riley is at home. Troy and Rebecca currently reside in Lawrenceville, Georgia, with their beautiful daughter. This is his NICU story.
Welcome, everybody. Our guest today is Troy Bayse. And Troy, I really want to thank you for sharing your story and coming on here and doing this for us. But if you don't mind, let's go ahead and get it started and just kind of start from the beginning with you guys.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. My wife and I, Rebecca, we found out she was pregnant, last December, so 2019, or actually New Year's, so January, somewhere in there. And, everything seemed great at first. No issues. We ran to the ER, a couple weeks in because, she was spotting and, everything checked out okay. And no, the pregnancy started off great. No issues or concerns, and everyone was happy and healthy.
And this was your first child, right?
Correct, yeah. First child for both of us. So we're very excited about that.
Awesome. And so everything was going great, and where did things kind of change for you guys?
So things kind of changed. We hit the 27-week mark, and we were actually visiting her mother in Florida, and she started getting lumps in her breasts, which, come to find out later on were just her milk ducts coming in and whatnot. But, we didn't know that at the time, so she was stressed out about that. And then, so when we got back up to Georgia, she went in, it was like Monday or Tuesday, something like that. And they told her, it's just your milk ducts coming in. And then maybe a couple days later, so Monday, milk ducts. Tuesday, she had another appointment with her OB, and they said, yeah, you've got gestational diabetes. Okay, which Tuesday was also the day we were moving apartments, which, we did our best to keep her from, doing anything.
Yeah.
So we moved, and that was that. And then Thursday night, which would be the 18th of June, I get home from work, and she's having contractions. And that's kind of what kicked off everything.
So she starts having contractions, and do you guys go into the hospital, or?
So, yeah. So I get home from work about, I want to say 5:30, and she tells me, I think I'm having Braxton Hicks, those fake contractions.
Mm-hmm.
And she says, yeah, it's been about since 5 o'clock, so 30 minutes, nothing to worry about. 6:30 rolls around, and now we're calling her OB, and she tells us to do this and that and call her back. And long story short, we were going on, 3 hours of contractions. And finally her OB says, yeah, you need to get to the hospital.
So you guys, you're at 27 or 28 weeks right now when all this is going on?
At the time Thursday night, we're like a couple days shy of 28 weeks.
Okay, gotcha. So they tell you to come in, and you guys go into the hospital?
Yeah, so we get in, they check her in, and we do all the, so we do the COVID tests, which, watching someone stick a 6-inch long Q-tip up your wife's nose for 10 to 15 seconds was not fun. And then they finally, they check her cervix, and they're like, oh, yeah, you're at 3 centimeters. So they tell us, yeah, you're in preterm labor. Like, this isn't fake. This isn't Braxton Hicks. Like, you're in labor. So that's kind of what kicks off the next couple of days.
So let me ask you this. I know, this is during the time of COVID and everything, and you guys obviously experienced something that most of us, wouldn't have even dreamed of. Was there a hesitation to go into the hospital, or did it add even more stress? I mean, just with everything that's going on, around the world?
Well, I wouldn't say it was like a hesitation. I mean, even before we left, in those couple hours, my wife was at the point where she was having to grab onto the wall or door frame or whatever to keep from, doubling over. So she was having legit contractions. And
yeah.
I'm having to squeeze her hips and do all the dad things, So we weren't hesitant at all. We were concerned that, that I wasn't going to be allowed in the room, period, which
right.
Thankfully, it boiled down to I was the only visitor allowed.
Yeah.
So that was, that was a blessing. So no hesitation of going in, but we were definitely relieved when, I was allowed to be in the room.
Yeah. So you guys go into the hospital, baby's coming, obviously, and you talk about those, setting it up for the next couple of days. What were those next couple of days like? What was that timeline?
Oh yeah, that's awesome. So we showed up Thursday night, and they confirmed, Rebecca's, she's in preterm labor. So they put her on I don't know the exact, medication. It was magnesium something to stop the contractions. Yeah. So they had her on that from Thursday night up to noon on Saturday, which they told us, hey, at noon Saturday, we're going to take you off the magnesium, and we're going to wait a couple hours to see what happens. And if your contractions come back, they had some other medication they were going to give her, which, needless to say, we waited a couple hours Saturday, and bam, contractions started immediately.
So how soon, once those contractions started, what was the next step? What was
So noon hit. They took her off the magnesium. We waited, I think, 2-3 hours, and for those couple hours, she was okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then the contractions came back just like they were before. And the secondary medication, I forget what it was, but it was a pill, and she took that around 2 or 3 o'clock Saturday, and I had to go back home to go take care of our dogs and whatnot. So by the time I got back to the hospital, it was, I want to say 6 o'clock. And when I got back, Rebecca's like rolling in the bed. Contractions are back to back. Just she's coherent and talking, but when the contractions hit, she just is out of it. Breathing and pushing. And this whole time, she's still at 3 centimeters. So, the medical staff advised we're just going to wait, because they had planned on giving her a second round of medication on these pills.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And, so we were kind of waiting on that. So that's kind of the next checkpoint we're at.
And it sounds like the baby's coming.
So, yeah. So sure enough, I got back around 6. So around 9 o'clock, I've been back at the hospital for 3 hours now. She's having these back-to-back contractions, and the nurse, comes in and says, "Oh, okay, well, let me check your cervix again." This is around 9 o'clock, 9 something. It's at this point, time is a construct to me. I don't know what time is.
Right, yeah.
So she checks her cervix again, and the nurse kind of, her eyes get big, and she says, "I'll be right back." And next thing you know, there's 15 people in the room, and the nurse is like, "Hey, your cervix is gone. The baby's head is presenting. Buckle up." So just in the span of 2 or 3 hours, she went from 3 centimeters to just baby's coming.
Yeah.
And we're at 27 days, or we're at 27 weeks and 6 days at this point.
And so the delivery, everything went okay?
Delivery went great. They had a doctor on duty at the time, not her OB, but they had a doctor just to be there, and we waited for OB to show up to deliver. And I was kind of shocked when one of the nurses, she said, "Hey, Dad, grab her foot and her leg, and you're going to help heave ho." And I was like, "What?" So, yep, when we say push, you're going to pull her leg up to her chest. And so I think, she only did 2 rounds of pushing, and, boop, out came Riley. Yeah, that was like a hurricane of emotions, and just, I didn't know what was going on.
So that's something really special in the fact of, I know a lot of us NICU dads, I know for myself, my daughter was born at 27 weeks too, and most of us deal with emergency C-sections. So you got to witness the birth of your daughter, naturally. And that emotion, were you still in the back of your mind at all concerned with how early she was? Or were you able to take in that moment of you witnessing your daughter? You know what I mean? Because for most of us, we're so concerned with how early it is, and it's an emergency C-section, so it's super scary. And so the fact that you got to witness the actual birth, did that kind of make it a little more special?
I'd say I had to tell my wife this, after the fact that, God completely planned for her to show up exactly when she was supposed to. Mm-hmm. And I'm so thankful that she didn't have any medical conditions on birth. Like, she came out breathing on her own. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I got to help with the pushing and witnessing her, birth our daughter, at that point in time, like, I was definitely concerned about, how early she was, but right. In the moment, I was just focused on, doing everything I needed to do, and getting her out. And the fact that it was a natural birth, I turned into a blubbering mess. As soon as she came out and, they were cleaning her up and I could see her, that's probably the most I've ever cried in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't even imagine, man. So Riley is here, and she looks okay and everything. And what happens with you guys after delivery, after she's born?
So she's delivered. They do the traditional, they clean her up real quick, wrap her up, and hold her in front of mom, and say, "Here's your baby." And the NICU nurses whisk her away to the pod and are doing their thing. And to our surprise, they and joy, honestly, they, the NICU nurses say, "Oh, she's breathing on her own." So, Rebecca's on the bed, and they're cleaning her up and doing their thing. And I say, "Hey, Dad, let's walk her over to the NICU." And I walk her in the NICU. I get less than 5 minutes with her. I hold my finger out, and she grabs my finger.
Yeah.
And next thing I know, they're like, "All right, you got to go because we're about to do some sterile procedures, yada yada," and which sets up a chain of events of I don't see my daughter in person for the next 3 weeks.
Jeez.
And that's kind of the next couple of nights is me taking care of Rebecca, and she's recovering.
So they take Riley to the NICU, and which we're all kind of familiar with, all us NICU dads and stuff. And you're taking care of Rebecca. Now, are you still able to be in the hospital with them? Or you're just not completely allowed in the NICU at all?
So they moved us to they moved us out of the delivery room into, I guess you could call it, the recovery room, where, you know, they're just checking on Rebecca, her vitals, and they start bringing in pumps and all that fun stuff. And so I'm allowed in there. And, you know, from the get-go, they said, hey, they told Rebecca, they're like, hey, Mom, you can, you know, whenever you want to, just come on down to the NICU. You can come sit with her, you know, and whatever their stipulations were at the time. But she was allowed to go visit the NICU. At that time, our hospital's current policy was, because of COVID, the only people allowed to visit in the NICU are the mothers. So I just kind of would just hang out in the recovery room.
Gee. So I can't even imagine. So do they actually tell you, hey, you're not going to be coming into the NICU? I mean, how does, do you get hit with that sledgehammer, or, you know?
I mean, as nicely as the nurses could put it, you know, without just telling me to, you know, fly off, they straight up said, hey, our current hospital policy is you're not allowed in. The only mothers only, because of COVID and reducing exposure. And they didn't pull any punches about it, because I even volunteered to, you know, scrub myself down and, you know, iodine and wear a surgical suit, the whole 9 yards, and they said, nope, you're not allowed in.
So
they
tell you this.
Day one.
Yeah, they tell you this on day one, and Rebecca's in the recovery room for a couple of days, and you're still there. Does anything change in that first week? As, you know, once she's recovered, or, you know?
No. So no, the first week, no. You know, Rebecca got discharged, and, you know, they said, hey, you can come visit whenever you want. All day, every day, you're free to visit. And, you know, Dad, on the other hand, no, not allowed to visit. So for 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks, the only means of me seeing my daughter was on a camera that, you know, they have set up in the NICU. They have individual cameras on each of the pods. That was it. I even showed up. I went a couple of times to go drop off breast milk. My wife had been pumping, and, you know, I ring a little bell, and they're like, how can we help you? And I'm dropping off breast milk, and I hand them the bag, and I say, okay, hold on, I'll be right back. And they kind of crack the door open, hand me the bag back, and say, have a good day. And so that's what I dealt with for 3 weeks.
So are you, I mean, we all know, like I said, I mean, I can't even imagine. You know, I know for me, it was one of the most important parts was us being there, for not only for our baby but also for the doctors. So you're not even able to talk to doctors, or other than maybe on the phone, or how is that working out on that part?
The most I got was I could call the NICU and ask questions, or if her camera was, off or whatever, or I couldn't see her. So it wasn't that I was completely restricted from any information. I could call the NICU, but I just wasn't allowed to physically be there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a lot of the medical information I was getting, as far as updates and her progress, my wife was filling me in on from, her being there, almost every day.
Well, I gotta ask you, Troy, what was that like?
At first, I kind of just dealt with it because I was in the mindset of, COVID. I get it. It's a hard decision to make of who's going to be in the NICU. I get it. But honestly, by the time I'm going to say by week 3 of the only contact with my daughter is through a camera, I had some other stuff going on in life, but I had the honest, I broke, gathering my thoughts. Sorry for the,
No.
There was a night, I remember my wife and I were just folding clothes, and I honestly just broke down in the middle of folding clothes and just crying, and I said, I just want to see my daughter. I don't, you can leave her in the pod, I just want to see her. I just want to be in the same room. And that was honestly that made my wife and I bond even more, because we just held each other crying. And, I had other stuff going on in life too that kind of caused me to honestly snap. And I told my wife, I was like, hey, I'm going to go sit in the car for a minute. And I didn't know what else to do besides just scream, because every fatherly instinct in my body, every fiber of my being just was screaming out to just be with my daughter. And all I could do was just sit in my car and just scream. Just simply so no one called the cops on me, because it's such a visceral just emotion of a father being told, nope, you can't see your daughter. Sorry. And those first 3 weeks were, it's honestly hell. I mean, that's hardest 3 weeks of my life.
Yeah, I can't imagine it, and I don't think there's any other way to describe it other than a living hell. Just, maybe if, if it was just a week, that would have been horrible, but I can't imagine, 3 weeks. And especially from you being able to experience the birth that you did, and go through that. I can't imagine going from such a high and then just having that taken away from you.
It was, you kind of nailed it on the head. It was the absolute high of, seeing my daughter born. I got to help with the delivery, cut the cord. Like, I got to do everything you normally do. And then within, 5-10 minutes of her being in the world, little did I know, hey, you don't get to see her for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you somehow managed to get through these 3 weeks. And then what happened?
So the 3 weeks go by. I keep carrying on like normal. I'm going to work. Which, in retrospect, I feel terrible for my wife because, she's at home, just at home. Like,
yeah.
She would go, every day, if not every other day, to see her, but, I can't imagine just sitting at home twiddling your thumbs.
Let me ask you something before we go past that 3 weeks. During this 3-week period, did you ever feel like a disconnect or, from your daughter or maybe even your wife at some time? Just because the hospital is basically keeping you outside?
I wouldn't say there was a disconnect from Rebecca, because she was going through her own struggles, and I was just doing my best as her husband to encourage her and support her and, not let her fall into a mindset of failure, because she was going through postpartum and the typical, well, I could have done this, I could have done that. And
yeah. The guilt.
Yeah, exactly. And, I don't understand that, but I can still do my part to not let her just sit in it.
Yeah.
So no, it actually brought us closer together. I will say those 3 weeks, I was talking to a friend of mine, who he's got his own adoption story, and, I told him, I've been a dad for 3 weeks, and I'm not a dad.
Yeah.
I haven't even touched her, held her, done anything. And so there was kind of a disconnect there. Just, it was this weird, I was just walking through life knowing I have a child, but against nothing of my own will. I can't be her father.
Yeah.
Just because the system says I can't because of Corona, or, I don't know. It's so hard to put into words.
Yeah, no, like I said, I mean, I can't imagine. I just can't imagine. Oh, man. So after 3 weeks, something changes.
So I'm at work one day, and my wife texts me, and she says, along the lines of, "Guess who you get to see?" And I was like, you know, I'm at work. And I was like, "Who? What are you talking about?" She's like, "Your daughter." And I was just like, "Holy crap! Oof, what?" And the timing was just perfect. That that day I could go see her. So when I clocked out of work, I said, "Hey, honey, I'm going straight to the hospital. I'll see you later." And I went to the hospital, and they're like, "Do you want to hold her?" And I was like, "Hold her?" I was like, "I want to take my shirt off. Like, we're doing skin to skin. Let's go." And that first skin to skin contact was kind of that kind of dispelled that previous 3 weeks of, I'm a dad, but I haven't done anything with my daughter.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I was going to ask the question, but you just answered it for me, of what that moment was like of being a dad, but, not having a chance to be a dad, and then holding your daughter for that first time. I mean, I know what skin to skin was like for me for the first time, and I could only imagine. Actually, I'm pretty sure I can't even imagine what it was like for you, and what those emotions must have been like when you got to do that for the first time.
I thought I was going to cry and be a blubbering mess when I went in, but really when I got in there and, I told them I want to hold her skin to skin, and it was honestly the most peaceful moment that I didn't even have time to cry. I was just so wrapped up in the joy of, it's been 3 weeks. Like, I touched you for 10 seconds when you held my finger, and now I can finally just hold you on my chest, and I didn't even care about crying because I was just so wrapped up in the moment of I can finally hold my daughter.
And after that, I take it they had lifted their some of the COVID protocols at the hospital.
Oh yeah, so the board of directors or whoever, they had a meeting, and which was why I could go see her in the first place. But so after that, my wife and I were going every other day, switching off, going to see her, and so she'd go one day, which of course, being a new mom, she was there 3-4 hours, and I was having to go after work, so I'd go for an hour and a half, and I'm falling asleep, and I'm like, I gotta go home. I gotta shower and get ready for bed. I've been working all day. Oh my God. But yeah, and then, which we were thankful that, her whole NICU experience, she really had zero problems.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads to the, I don't want to say the closing chapter, but her ending chapter of her NICU time.
So, how long were you guys total in the NICU?
Total in NICU, 7 weeks.
7 weeks. And I will say this is, I'm a peer-to-peer mentor with Hand to Hold, and I got to mentor Troy here. And this is all, really special for me, just in the fact of, when I just can't say enough how important personally I think it is for NICU parents who are going through these experiences to be able to have some kind of peer-to-peer mentoring, to have somebody to talk to or so. And so when I was asked, and you were brought in for me to mentor, man, I didn't know what, with everything going on with COVID and the pandemic and what hospitals were doing, I didn't really know what was gonna, what to say really, in the fact of I would have never dreamed that a NICU dad would not be allowed to see his baby in the NICU. We hear hospitals talk about it all the time, and, they want involvement from NICU parents and everything. And here we have this dad who is, kept away for 3 weeks. And so, it was really, I don't want to say I was, to be a part of that, but just, I just couldn't believe how well you guys handled it. And just, I still couldn't believe the situation. I mean, for me, it's just so unimaginable. I know how hard the NICU experience was already, but to be kept away, I can't imagine. And I'm glad we got to share some of our back and forth during that time. I know it was special for me. I don't know how it was for you.
My dad was actually the one who sent me the information about Hand to Hold, which, I was so thankful for. And, I didn't know what to expect. And, I think her name was Jenny. I may be mistaken about that, but she told me up front, like, hey, we've never had any, NICU parents who've dealt with COVID who are peer mentors, which I was like, I don't care. I just need someone to talk to, because, my wife and I confide in each other and talk, but I can't tell her what I'm feeling as a father, as a man, and her to grasp it, and Alex, when we started talking and you were telling me about your story, it was relieving knowing, I wasn't alone, that, I'm not the only dad sitting here, with the stress and the weight on the mind of, I got a preemie baby, like, are they going to be okay? I got to take care of my wife. I still got to go to work. Just all those things. So that, it was just nice having someone who could even, in the slightest sense, say, I know what you're going through. And, I would just stress that especially with COVID, if anyone's, listening to this, going through the same thing, please reach out to Hand to Hold, or just anybody. Please talk to somebody. Don't just bottle it up. It was rough. I'm glad I had Alex.
No, man, it was super special. I remember the day when you were like, hey, they let me back in the hospital, and, the same thing of, hey, Riley's coming home. And, that was really awesome to be a part of that. And I'm really happy for you guys. I'm really happy that the whole NICU experience for you, that you guys didn't have too many, other than the beginning and dealing with COVID, there weren't that many speed bumps for you, and that you had more good days than bad. That's really awesome. And maybe it's one of those things where you had all your bad at one time.
Yeah. Us and our Christians believe in God. We just chalk it up to Him having a plan, and we left it at that. So.
Man, that's like I said. Congratulations to you guys. Riley is home. You guys are home. You made it. Do you have any? I know you talked about talking to somebody, but do you have any advice for NICU dads who are going through? I think some hospitals right now are kind of relaxing the protocol a little, but any dads right now, I know as former NICU dads, can't even imagine what you NICU dads who are going through this right now during this pandemic. Is there any advice that you offer NICU dads who are in the NICU right now during this time of this virus?
As far as advice, I'd say, NICU dads, your wives, they're, the mothers of their children, you may not understand it, but just they're going through way more than you are. Not discrediting your emotions and what you're going through, but just uplift them, support them. Like every now and then, just say you're doing a good job. That means so much to them. Say thank you to your nurses. Like some, you don't know what they're going through, and they're not there because, they just absolutely love, NICU babies. But, say thank you. That means the world to them. And, and if you need to talk to, even if it's not somebody who knows what you're going, just talk to somebody. Just don't bottle it up. Just talk to someone. And that's the advice I'd give.
Man, well, that's great stuff, Troy. And once again, man, I want to thank you so much for sharing your story. Man, it's just, I can't say it enough. Just can't imagine what you went through, man. And, not being able to go in there and be with your baby. But I thank you so much for being a part of this and for being willing to share your story and for also letting me mentor you. I really appreciate it, and I want to congratulate you guys, and hope Riley is very healthy, from here on out, and that you guys are blessed.
Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support. Once again, please take a look at thenicudad.com. We continue to grow the list of resources we are bringing NICU dads. To my fellow NICU dads, good luck, and remember, you are not alone.